The Cannonball Run is well known for its outrageous stunts, all-star cast, and outrageous humor. It was much more bizarre behind the scenes. The film was full of surprises, ranging from on-set mayhem and secret cameos to real-life protests. These are some of the lesser-known facts. And behind-the-scenes tales that might have gone unnoticed by even the biggest fans. Let's go forward. Let's start by discussing number 1. The truth is far more bizarre than what you would have assumed was Hollywood craziness. The Cannonball Run was more than just a crazy Hollywood farce with ostentatious vehicles and extravagant stunts. It was inspired by a true story, one that was unsafe, unlawful, and utterly ridiculous. Renowned race car driver Dan Gurney and veteran automotive journalist Brock Yates collaborated on a cross-country stunt in 1971 that would become an underground legend. Their objective? Travel as quickly as you can from New York to California. It was a straightforward protest against the national speed restriction, not for attention or financial benefit. The U.S. government had tightened the speed limit on legal driving at the time, citing concerns about fuel economy and safety. Gurney and Yates didn't believe it. They thought that competent, seasoned drivers could safely handle such speeds. They so got into a car and drove across the nation to demonstrate their point. In less than 36 hours, they completed the journey from coast to coast. No rules, no official approval, and certainly nothing to do with the highway patrol. However, what began as a stunt soon evolved into something more. A spark was lit by their run. Word got out. Other drivers immediately wanted to join. 5 more cannonball-style races took place in secret over the ensuing years. These weren't little fun fairs. These were full-fledged, unrestrained sprints across the nation. Drivers from across the United States seized the opportunity to challenge the system. Some arrived with customized muscle cars and exotic Ferraris, eager to push the boundaries of both the law and their engines. Others arrived in disguise, evading detection with ruses and fictitious credentials. Famously, one squad arrived in a real ambulance with flashing lights, sirens, and fake medical records. They weren't merely acting. To prove to authorities that they were on an emergency run, they even dressed in medical uniforms, demonstrating their complete dedication to the duty. And it was successful. Unaware that they were aiding someone in winning an unlawful race, the police allowed them to pass. These races lacked a regulating authority, organization, and most likely safety assurances. It was utter anarchy, fueled by revolt and adrenaline. The challenge was implicit. There were no rules. Do whatever it takes to get there first. For that very reason, people adored it. It happened quickly. It was careless. It was all the speed junkies' fantasy and everything the legal system detested. Let's move on to number 2. The true creator incidentally sneaked into his own film. The majority of fans are unaware that Brock Yates makes an appearance in the film Cannonball Run. He has a minor supporting role as one of the race officials. The exciting part comes next. He was not acting at all. He was the real brains behind the whole cannonball concept. He was the driving force behind the first race, as well as its creator and organizer. Yates, who loved fast automobiles and open highways, wrote for Car and Driver magazine. He considered the government's imposition of a stringent national speed restriction to be absurd. He therefore devised a strategy rather than penning irate pieces. The Cannonball Baker's seat, a shining C Memorial Trophy dash, was born out of that idea. Yes, the whole name is that. He aimed to demonstrate that competent drivers could go great distances at high speeds without suffering any accidents. He accomplished it, not merely write about it. Yates was present on set when Hollywood produced a film based on the race years later, portraying the same character he had in real life. Now let's discuss number 3. Additionally, that dilapidated ambulance wasn't merely a prop. In the Cannonball Run, that odd-looking Dodge ambulance wasn't merely a prop. Brock Yates used the same car in the actual 1979 Cannonball race. That year, Yates and director Hal Needham came into the race with a crazy strategy. To fool police officers into believing they were on emergency medical business, they purchased a real operational ambulance. They even had a patient in the rear and employed a phony doctor. It was among the most ingenious disguises ever used in the race's history. Most of the time, it did the trick. However, things didn't go as planned. The ambulance caught fire during the actual race near Palm Springs. Their sprint was almost over when it overheated in the scorching sun. Nevertheless, the team persevered and reached the end. They used the exact same Dodge ambulance from the actual race when filming the movie, not merely a car that looked like it. Therefore, keep in mind that it had already done the job in real life when you see Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise speeding across the nation in that dilapidated van. Now for number 4. The star himself has a shocking twist that will astound you. Although he was the spokesperson for the Cannonball Run, Burt Reynolds wasn't really thrilled with his involvement. He subsequently referred to it as one of his worst career choices. So why did he do it at all? Easy. Hal Needham, a buddy, asked him to. The film's director, Needham, has previously collaborated with Reynolds on action comedies such as Smokey and the Bandit. They trusted one another and were close friends. Reynolds readily agreed when Hal proposed the concept of a crazy cross-country race that would be full of jokes and mayhem. However, Reynolds soon discovered that the film was not what he had anticipated once production got underway. He felt the entire situation was too ridiculous and didn't like the screenplay. He said in interviews that he only accepted the position to support a friend and be paid. The twist? The audiences adored it. The Cannonball Run was a box office success and is still a favorite among fans. Despite his distaste for the movie, Reynolds' portrayal as the cool, lovable daredevil was solidified. Actors' most regrettable roles might occasionally become the ones that fans remember the most. Now let's explore number 5. Reynolds wasn't the only one who caused uncertainty. One actress didn't know what she was getting herself into. Filming a dramatic action romance was Farrah Fawcett's initial thought. She thought it was a dramatic road movie after reading the script and noticing the fast automobiles and romantic angle. And nobody informed her that it was meant to be humorous. Then bizarre things happened. When Dean Martin arrived on set, he was dressed as a priest. He was laughing during his lines and was obviously intoxicated. In between takes, Sammy Davis Jr., disguised as a priest, joked. Farrah began to question the true nature of this film. Still expecting the tone to be serious, she continued. It wasn't until the film's premiere that she realized what it was. She initially saw the completed picture while seated in the theater. The scenes were chaotic, the crowd was laughing, and the atmosphere was completely different from what she had anticipated. It finally dawned on her then. The whole thing was a farce. In retrospect, her bewilderment actually improved her performance. Her straight-faced demeanor added to the humor surrounding her. Farrah became one of the most memorable aspects of the film, despite her ignorance of the genre. Being lost can sometimes be a good thing. Going on to number 6, the best casting occasionally occurs by chance. It was not intended for Sammy Davis Jr. to participate in the Cannonball Run. He played a part that was initially intended for Don Rickles, but Rickles left at the last minute. As a result, the team had to find someone who could infuse the position with charm, humor, and vitality. Now let's talk about Sammy Davis Jr. On short notice, he consented to join. And he took center stage even though he didn't have much time to prepare. Alongside Dean Martin, Sammy, dressed as a priest, contributed his own flair, witty banter, and fluid delivery. He was enjoying himself, not merely portraying a role. He and Martin had a humorous and organic chemistry. As if they had been a comedy team for years, the two bounced off one another. Sammy's scenes ended up being some of the most hilarious in the film. With ease, he added genuine personality to every moment by singing lines, cracking jokes, and playing off the mayhem. Despite not being the first pick, he soon emerged as one of the movie's strongest elements. Critics lauded him, fans adored him, and he added even more excitement to the film. A casting win resulted from what had begun as a last-minute alteration. Let's go on to the 7th. Those two weren't simply being naughty, they were acting out. Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin were intoxicated when filming the Cannonball Run, not just posing as inebriated monks. They actually drank alcohol on stage, as evidenced by the drinks in their hands, which weren't props. Their moments were filled with spontaneous jokes that made it into the final cut, mumbled prayers and laughs. The script didn't even include the majority of their lines. Nearly everything they did was impromptu. After observing the situation, director Hal Needham made the decision to not oppose it. He let them to run free rather than attempting to tame them. He reasoned that it enhanced the film's charm and turmoil. He was correct. It was the reason their chemistry felt so genuine. They had a natural rhythm that came from years of friendship and partying together. The crew simply continued to roll when Dean stumbled over his words or Sammy started laughing. This led to some of the most memorable and humorous scenes in the movie. For Dean and Sammy, it worked, even though it's uncommon for actors to be that relaxed on camera and yet look great. Their fun in real life became magical in the film. Comedy gold was created out of what could have been a disaster. Going on to number 8, there were regulations associated with being James Bond. Moore had to learn the hard way. He pretended to be a stylish secret agent, flirted with ladies, and drove fancy automobiles. The joke? He was a wealthy man posing as Bond, not the actual thing. Fans adored the humorous parody. However, one group did not find it amusing at all: MGM Productions. Roger Moore starred in key 7 films as the official James Bond at the time. The rights to the Bond franchise were owned by me, which took the role very seriously. They weren't pleased to see Moore mocking the part in a comedy. They believed it damaged the reputation they had fought so hard to preserve and made Bond appear foolish. There was a lot of backlash. Following the movie's premiere, MGM intervened and made a choice. They prohibited all Bond actors, past and present, from parodying or doing anything that would harm the Bond brand. In the end, Moore's participation in the Cannonball Run altered the guidelines for all of his followers. It's ironic. Behind the scenes, a humorous but lighthearted character produced serious problems. Although Moore enjoyed it, the studio wasn't amused and took precautions to ensure it wouldn't occur again. Now let's discuss number 9. Not all behind-the-scenes tales end happily. A stunt that went catastrophically wrong during the Cannonball Run's production profoundly altered the movie business. Heidi Von Bells, a stunt woman, was seen in a fast-paced scenario in an Aston Martin. Despite the car's mechanical issues, the stunt was carried out. No seatbelts were properly fastened. Heidi was flung forward and shattered her neck when the car collided with a van. She was permanently paralyzed by the accident. Heidi's future and career were ruined at the age of 24. Everyone in the industry was taken aback by the crash. It demonstrated how little thought was paid to safety on stunt sets during that era. Many stunt cars lacked even the most basic safety features. Hollywood at last began to take safety more seriously after the catastrophe. One significant shift happened quite fast. All stunt vehicles are now required to have seatbelts. Additionally, studios started doing more safety inspections and paying attention to the cautions of stunt coordinators. The business has to improve its protections for performers after Heidi's awful accident. Even though the Cannonball Run was supposed to be an entertaining and crazy film, this behind-the-scenes experience made a lasting impression. Hollywood underwent life-saving adjustments as a result of Heidi's suffering, and her narrative became a turning point. Number 10. Hollywood did a terrible job of treating its future star. The Cannonball Run was Jackie Chan's first American motion picture. However, things didn't turn out as he had hoped. He demonstrated his trademark martial arts skills while racing a high-tech automobile made by Japan. However, many of his best action sequences were removed during the film's editing. Why? They were thought to be too serious for a lighthearted comedy. The movie diminished Jackie's unique qualities rather than highlighting them. However, the credits were the worst part. Jackie was categorized as Japanese despite being a proud Chinese actress. It wasn't a straightforward error. It demonstrated the lack of attention Hollywood at the time paid to Asian representation. Despite his frustration, he took charge of his career as a result of the experience. With movies that allowed him to combine comedy and action in his own unique way, he made the decision to enter Hollywood on his own terms. He became a worldwide celebrity years later because to films like Rush Hour and Rumble in the Bronx. Although he wasn't treated fairly, the Cannonball Run provided him with the motivation he required. In the end, that miscredit marked the beginning of something much more significant. Now let's explore number 11. You wouldn't believe how little preparation went into this film. Although the Cannonball Run appears to be a well-planned, crazy comedy, it was actually a chaotic event behind the scenes. There was hardly any script. Frequently, scenes were revised or written just minutes before filming. In the parking lot, writers would scrawl new lines, give them to the performers, and get going. Later, Farrah Fawcett acknowledged that she never saw the entire script. She was occasionally handed pages without even understanding the subject matter of the subsequent scene. Confusion resulted from this freestyle, but also contributed to the film's frantic and erratic vitality. Hal Needham, the director, enjoyed working intuitively. He gave the players freedom to improvise, deviate from the script, and enjoy playing their parts. This strategy produced a lot of hilarious moments, but also a lot of confusion because the cast was full of comedians and well-known figures. The film had the vibe of a party on wheels, which is precisely what it was. The Cannonball Run depended on fast thinking, last-minute adjustments, and sheer chance, whereas most movies have a rigorous filming schedule. Somehow it worked even though it shouldn't have. Its chaotic charm, which fans still like today, was enhanced by the lack of a strong narrative, which could have destroyed it. On to number 12, this movie established a custom that we still adore today. Blooper sequences at the conclusion of movies are ubiquitous today, but the Cannonball Run was one of the first big-budget movies to use them in 1981. Viewers witnessed the actors fumbling with their lines, giggling during takes, and having fun behind the scenes as the credits rolled. It made the movie feel even more playful and offered another level of enjoyment. These bloopers turned out to be an unexpected smash. In order to get one more laugh, fans lingered during the credits. The entire film felt like a party as you watched Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, and the rest of the cast laugh. It also demonstrated how much fun the performers were having, despite the setbacks, during filming. Jackie Chan was one person who particularly cherished this concept. Bloopers included like that was the first time he had ever seen it. He started including his own blooper clips at the conclusion of his subsequent movies after being inspired by it. His end credit sequences from Rush Hour and Police Story gained as much notoriety as the action. Now, let's discuss number 13. The tale wasn't the only instance of law-breaking. Run. But rather than celebrating, the encounter left him feeling bewildered and frustrated. His identity was falsified in the movie, despite the fact that he is proudly Chinese, identifying him as Japanese in the credits. Although it appeared to be a minor error to many spectators, Jackie saw it as a setback to his reputation and heritage. Fans in Asia, where he had spent years establishing his reputation, adored his distinct blend of humor and action. However, he was merely another foreign actor cast in a supporting part in Hollywood. The missed credits seemed to indicate that the industry didn't care about him or comprehend him. Jackie took that moment as inspiration, rather than a reason to give up. He understood that he needed to prove his abilities to Hollywood if he wanted them to take him seriously. He came back with films like Rush Hour and Rumble in the Bronx, where he was freer to be himself. He required that early identity dilemma as motivation. He transformed his annoyance into concentration, and ultimately the error that caused him pain elevated him even further. On number 15, we'll talk about how movie stunts might appear too realistic. Things were a bit too real during the Cannonball Run's crazy Las Vegas pursuit sequence. On the streets of Vegas, the filmmakers enacted a fast-paced vehicle chase, complete with sirens, screeching tires, and mayhem. However, they neglected to notify the local police, which was crucial. When actual police officers on duty witnessed the cars tearing through traffic and pulling off crazy stunts, they mistook it for a real chase. They were unaware that a film was being made. Patrol cars sped to the site in a matter of minutes, prepared to make arrests. The film crew needed to move quickly. They hurried to clarify that everything was a part of the shoot. Some officers were incensed because they believed it to be a dangerous prank. The entire production was in danger of being shut down for a few seconds. While the matter was resolved, several crew members were even placed under arrest. Fortunately, the mistake was resolved and no one was harmed. However, it was a wake-up call. Real action was what the Cannonball team desired, and nearly received actual jail time. Everyone was reminded by that one scene of how hazy the boundary is between real-life danger and cinematic magic. Speaking of strange things, number 16 is here. Everyone's favorite issue was one actor's happiness. The center of the mayhem during the Cannonball Run was Dom DeLuise. Every scenario was made more enjoyable by his exuberance, silly charm, and outrageous comedy. On set, it also led to some issues. He was laughing uncontrollably. Every time Burt Reynolds cracked a joke or a scene became too ridiculous, Dom would laugh out loud. This is known as corpsing in the movie industry, and Dom did it all the time. It made filming difficult, but the crew thought it was hilarious. Usually keeping his calm, Burt Reynolds would roll his eyes at Dom's outbursts of laughing. Those eye rolls weren't always scripted. Sometimes they were genuine. Since some of those responses were funnier than what was written, they were actually kept in the final cut. Dom's laughter spread like wildfire. Around him, even seasoned performers couldn't help but laugh. Should be. Takes had to be remade, scenes would break down, and the set would become a comedy club. However, nobody was overly bothered. He was very happy. And it gave the film an organic charm. Number 17. The impact of this film extended well beyond the theater. Not only did the Cannonball Run influence film, but it also influenced the development of video games. Outrun, one of the most renowned arcade games of the 1980s, was inspired by its wild cross-country racing style and rebellious intensity. Outrun, which Sega released between 1986, became an immediate smash. Players beat the clock and dodged traffic while racing through gorgeous scenery in a red Ferrari with a female passenger. Does that sound familiar? The essence of the film was the same even though the game didn't exactly replicate it. Open highways, fast cars, and complete freedom. Similar to the Cannonball Run, there were no rigorous racing regulations. The excitement of the ride was the main focus. Yu Suzuki, the game designer, even stated that he wanted Outrun to seem more like a road trip adventure than a race. The Cannonball Run's atmosphere was the inspiration for the concept of speeding across roads with flair, fun, and a little bit of mayhem. Although the game concentrated on arcade action and the film was full of comedy and thrills, both shared a passion for pleasure and speed. We might not have experienced the exhilarating rush of Outrun without the Cannonball Run, even if it isn't a video game. On to number 18, not even the film crew could distinguish between the characters. Despite having one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces, Burt Reynolds' stunt duplicate deceived even the executives on the Cannonball Run production. Many of the driving and action sequences in the film were acted out by Roy Tatum, who had previously collaborated with Reynolds. However, Tatum's physique wasn't exactly the same as Reynolds. People couldn't tell him apart since he looked so much like him. Tatum actually played a minor part in the movie as well. In one scenario, he was dressed in full uniform and played a police officer. Some staff members honestly believed he was Burt in costume when they saw him moving about the scene. For a minute, even the producers were perplexed. The likeness was so striking that Tatum could pass crew and extras without anyone noticing, but appearances weren't the only consideration. Tatum has the attitude and manners of Reynolds down pat. Tatum kept the scenes going while the actual Reynolds wasn't present. It's funny to think that someone posing as someone else twice gave one of the most convincing performances in a film full of crazy characters and mayhem. Number 19 comes next. Talk about paying attention to what you say. Director Hal Needham wasn't your typical one. He was well known for his experience as a stuntman and was a proponent of creating films with genuine action and danger. He therefore offered to use his own Ferrari 308 GS for the movie instead of merely using studio vehicles when it came time to film the Cannonball Run. Yes, he was the owner of the svelte red sports car that was seen racing through scenes. Needham was a skilled practitioner. He trusted his stunt team to deliver the real driving footage he desired. However, it wasn't exactly a safe bet to allow actors and stunt drivers drive and slide around in a car worth millions of dollars. Everyone held their breath when the Ferrari almost crashed during a high-speed take. However, it was worthwhile for Halliday. He thought the movie needed more than just cinematic gimmicks. It needed genuine energy. Fans enjoyed the film's raw, unpolished edge because of the danger. The majority of directors would never give up their own vehicle for a comedy with lots of stunts. But most directors weren't Needham. He barely made it to the finish of filming with his Ferrari. It established that Hal was always prepared to put skin and steel in the game and became part of the movie's folklore. Studio management noticed something unique on number 20 before anybody else did. Many people questioned if the Cannonball Run would even come together since it was so chaotic, full of last-minute script changes and unplanned laughter. However, studio bosses began to view the dailies while the crew continued to shoot. The uncut, unprocessed video from every day's events wasn't only functional, it was magical. The chemistry between the actors was amazing, even with the loose plot and the continual improvisation. It was evident that Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. were having a great time. The laughter was genuine. It was a frantic yet enjoyable action. The dailies returned stronger each day. The final cut was not awaited by the studio. Cannonball Run 2 was approved before any filming had even concluded. In Hollywood, such early acclaim is uncommon, particularly for a film that initially appeared so erratic. However, the risk was worthwhile. Due to the previous movie's success at the box office, the sequel's production was accelerated. The studio came to the realization that occasionally true magic can come from letting things get a little messy. Finally, we have the number 21. Let's examine a few unexpected faces you most likely overlooked. Big-name performers were already abundant in the Cannonball Run, but the movie also had a ton of amusing uncredited cameos, which are unexpected appearances by well-known people who only appear in a few scenes without ever being mentioned in the credits. A film that already felt like one big Hollywood party was made even more chaotic and charming by these hidden jewels. Valerie Perrine makes an unexpected entrance during the fast-paced opening pursuit at the beginning of the film. Perrine, who is most known for her role as Miss Teschmacher in Superman 1978, is not given credit for her role as a state trooper. Although the moment is brief, if fans were quick enough to notice, her entrance gave them a little wink. The renowned NASCAR announcer Ken Squire, who is most recognized for being the voice of the Daytona 500, is another obscure figure. He makes a fleeting appearance as a member of the California Highway Patrol. His appearance wasn't merely for show. It gave a film about reckless driving and speeding true racing authenticity. For true motorsports enthusiasts, it was a subtle touch. And Peter Fonda comes next. In an instant, he appears as himself, in charge of a motorcycle gang. In addition to adding a rebellious flair that perfectly complements the film's lawless, go-anywhere vibe, it's a subtle tribute to his classic performance in Easy Rider. These unacknowledged cameos brought layers of pleasure and surprise, but they weren't important plot factors. For aficionados of film racing and counterculture, each one felt like a tiny inside joke, a hidden handshake to the audience. It gave the impression that the film was more than merely a comedy. It turned into a celebration of all those who enjoyed freedom, speed, and a hint of craziness. These fleeting appearances contributed to the film's enduring appeal in an era of fast vehicles, outrageous stunts, and constant humor. There was more to the Cannonball Run than just laughter and fast cars. It was crowded, with unexpectedly crazy moments. From actual crashes to off-script craziness, the film never ceases to amaze you. Hit like, subscribe, and stick around for more cinematic chaos you might not have noticed if that rocked your head. Consideration: Tatum has the attitude and manners of Reynolds down pat. Tatum kept the scenes going while the actual Reynolds wasn't present. It's funny to think that someone posing as someone else twice gave one of the most convincing performances in a film full of crazy characters and mayhem. Number 19 comes next. Talk about paying attention to what you say. Director Hal Needham wasn't your typical one. He was well known for his experience as a stuntman and was a proponent of creating films with genuine action and danger. He therefore offered to use his own Ferrari 308 GS for the movie instead of merely using studio vehicles when it came time to film the Cannonball Run. Yes, he was the owner of the svelte red sports car that was seen racing through scenes. Needham was a skilled practitioner. He trusted his stunt team to deliver the real driving footage he desired. However, it wasn't exactly a safe bet to allow actors and stunt drivers drive and slide around in a car worth millions of dollars. Everyone held their breath when the Ferrari almost crashed during a high-speed take. However, it was worthwhile for Halliday. He thought the movie needed more than just cinematic gimmicks. It needed genuine energy. Fans enjoyed the film's raw, unpolished edge because of the danger. The majority of directors would never give up their own vehicle for a comedy with lots of stunts. But most directors weren't need him. He barely made it to the finish of filming with his Ferrari. It established that Hal was always prepared to put skin and steel in the game and became part of the movie's folklore. Studio management noticed something unique on number 20 before anybody else did. Many people questioned if the Cannonball Run would even come together since it was so chaotic, full of last-minute script changes and unplanned laughter. However, studio bosses began to view the dailies while the crew continued to shoot. The uncut, unprocessed video from every day's events wasn't only functional, it was magical. The chemistry between the actors was amazing, even with the loose plot and the continual improvisation. It was evident that Burt Reynolds, Dom DeLuise, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. were having a great time. The laughter was genuine. It was a frantic yet enjoyable action. The dailies returned stronger each day. The final cut was not awaited by the studio. Cannonball Run 2 was approved before any filming had even concluded. In Hollywood, such early acclaim is uncommon, particularly for a film that initially appeared so erratic. However, the risk was worthwhile. Due to the previous movie's success at the box office, the sequel's production was accelerated. The studio came to the realization